For decades, Hulk Hogan has been a larger-than-life hero to millions and a lightning rod for controversy. His life has been painted in gold and glory, but beneath the surface, shadows twist around his legacy. From whispered conspiracies and occult accusations to secretive power connections and scandals that shook pop culture, Hogan's story is laced with dark corners the spotlight was never meant to reach. In this video, we'll pull back the curtain and dive deep into the eerie, unsettling secrets of Hulk Hogan, the ones that you are never supposed to hear. This is the definitive Hulk Hogan Iceberg. And we're starting off at the tippity top of the iceberg, Tier 6, with our first entry on Tier 6 being Hulk Hogan's death and the reaction. On July 31, 2025, Hulk Hogan, real name Terry Bollea, died at his Clearwater, Florida home. He collapsed following a therapy session after returning from the hospital. The official cause was a heart attack. It was later revealed that he had also been battling leukemia. Weeks earlier, rumors had swirled that he was already on his deathbed, rumors that were publicly denied at the time, but the mystery-filled chatter ended in tragedy, and suddenly, the Immortal One was gone. The reaction to his death was as divided as his legacy. While many fans mourned the loss of one of wrestling's most iconic figures, others reacted with outright celebration, posting mocking messages, memes, and disrespectful comments. To them, Hogan wasn't a hero, but a man whose controversies outweighed his contributions. What perfectly encapsulates this is the situation with WWE star Chelsea Green, as she found herself at the center of a firestorm. She said this during an interview just hours after his death.
I mean, polarizing political views aside, he was an absolute icon. And if it weren't for Hulk Hogan, there are many of us in the wrestling industry that would absolutely not be here.
She also followed up with a tweet sending condolences to Hulk Hogan. What followed hit hard. Fans accused her of glossing over his more controversial sides. Chelsea Green tried to clarify the situation by saying that her stance on racism is unwavering, and she apologized if her words felt dismissive, but the backlash intensified. She received harassment, death threats, and ultimately stepped away from social media entirely. Hogan's death didn't just mark the death of an era, it reopened old wounds, dredged up past controversies, and turned grief into a battleground. Even in passing, his presence continues to ignite fierce divides. And up next, we have the tape leaks and racist rant. It's the scandal that changed everything. In 2012, the world was blindsided when a fornication tape featuring Hulk Hogan and Heather Clem, the wife of his best friend, Bubba the Love Sponge, leaked online. What made it worse was the alleged source, Bubba himself, who reportedly had an open arrangement with his wife and supposedly gave Hogan permission, all while secretly recording the act. The footage ripped away the all-American hero veneer Hulk Hogan had spent decades building. Overnight, the Immortal One became late-night comedy fodder, and his image reduced to a punchline. What leaked here in 2012 was just the tape itself, as the real damage came 3 years later in 2015, when audio from that same tape resurfaced, and it was far darker than anyone expected. On it, Hogan was heard using the N-word repeatedly, voicing disgust at his daughter Brooke dating a black man. The fallout was immediate and brutal. WWE erased him from their Hall of Fame, scrubbed his name from their website, and all but acted like Hulk Hogan never existed. In the space of a few minutes of leaked footage and audio, the man who told kids to say their prayers and eat their vitamins had become one of wrestling's, in fact, pop culture's most polarizing figures, and for many, there was no going back. The silver lining in this is that Hogan did sue Gorka, the company who released this tape, and the jury ordered Gorka to pay Hogan $115 million. So despite his reputation being tarnished, his pockets were heavy. And up next, we have the many lies of Hulk Hogan. This could be an iceberg by itself, but here's a rapid-fire trip through all the Hulkster's most outrageous tall tales, and the receipts that tear them down. Hogan once claimed that at a wrestling show at Wembley Stadium, he stood with Michael Jackson and Mr. T for Make-A-Wish Kids, hugged a dying child, and later recorded a tribute album produced by Simon Cowell. The problem? WWE only held one show in Wembley Stadium, and that was SummerSlam 92, and Hogan wasn't even there or on the card. And there's also no record of Michael Jackson or Mr. T being there as well. The next lie that Hogan said was that Mike Tyson was supposed to box him, but he pulled out of the fight because he was too scared to fight him. There's no boxing records, promoter notes, or Tyson interviews backing this up. And I think everyone knows that peak Mike Tyson wasn't afraid to fight anyone. And the next lie is that Hogan sat next to Kerry Von Erich on a plane from Japan to America before his death. This one's a lie because Kerry's last match was in Dallas 6 days before his in Texas. And if you check the records, Kerry hadn't been to Japan in a long time because he was fighting a myriad of legal issues. The next lie is that he claimed that he was the first choice for the George Foreman grill, and it was actually supposed to be called the Hulk Hogan grill. Hogan says that he missed the call because he was picking up his kids. Even if this is true, endorsement deals of that scale aren't decided in a single phone call. The next lie that Hulk Hogan said is that he was the first wrestler to ever use entrance music, which is just a complete lie because there's so much proof of wrestlers before him using entrance music. The next lie is that he was scouted by the Yankees and Reds. Hogan did love baseball when he was younger, but neither MLB team has a scouting report, draft note, or press mention of trying to scout Hogan. Scouts back then would have been local, and Hogan's own high school baseball record doesn't indicate pro-level play. The next lie is that he discovered Kevin Owens in NXT. Owens was already a decorated indie star with a decade-long career before NXT. Hogan wasn't in WWE at the time, so his "I spotted him" story doesn't add up. The next lie is that he said that he wrestled 400 days in a year. Hogan claimed that because he constantly flew between Japan and America, the time zones added extra days. This is just mathematically impossible because even with Japan trips, at most you'd squeeze in a handful of double show days. And the next lie is that he outranked John Belushi after WrestleMania 2. Well, WrestleMania 2 was in 1986 and John Belushi died in 1982. The next lie is that Elvis Presley was a fan. This is just not true because Hogan made his professional wrestling debut on 10 August 1977, and just 6 days later, on 16 August 1977, Elvis Presley died. Hogan wasn't even famous at that point as he only really started to take off around 79. There's so many more lies. And up next we have Booed at Last Appearance. On January 6, 2025, Netflix's first Monday Night Raw, 2.5 hours in, Hulk Hogan's iconic music, Real American, hit, and Hogan strode out with Jimmy Hart. But instead of nostalgia, he got a tidal wave of boos.
We got freaking Jimmy and Hulk.
Hogan congratulated WWE on the Netflix deal and then leaned hard into a pitch for his Real American beer, name-dropping the brand and trying to spin the moment into an ad read. But the crowd keeps on getting louder and louder, drowning him out with boos. The segment limps to a close under non-stop jeers, a brutal reminder that the Immortal One couldn't sell the crowd on Real American when Hulkamania itself isn't selling anymore. And up next we have Hulk Hogan banned from AEW. While WWE eventually forgave Hulk Hogan for his racism and quietly brought him back, AEW has made it clear, he's not welcome. The ban isn't just symbolic. AEW President Tony Khan stated it outright in 2020. During the nationwide unrest that year, Hogan's ex-wife Linda posted a racist tweet claiming that African Americans weren't civilized because they were looting. Khan quickly responded, saying, "You've now joined your husband in being banned from all AEW shows. Congratulations." The message was blunt. AEW wanted no association with either of them. Unlike WWE, which timed Hogan's return for Damage Control and Nostalgia Pops, AEW has kept the door locked. In their world, Hogan isn't just controversial, he's permanently persona non grata. AEW even ignored Hulk Hogan's death with much backlash from fans, but eventually they got around to it. And up next we have Erased from WWE 2K15. In WWE 2K15, Hulk Hogan was featured as a DLC in the Path of the Warrior showcase. But in 2015, after the racist audio leaked, 2K pulled Hogan from the game entirely. He vanished from the store, and for a short time, even players who had paid for him couldn't re-download the content. Fans were furious. Not only was a paid DLC yanked without warning, but there were no refunds. It was as if Hogan had been wiped from existence, and you just lost your money. Hogan wouldn't return to the 2K series until WWE 2K20, but for many players, the erasure left a sour taste that went beyond the scandal. And up next we have Hulk Hogan sues WCW. Bash at the Beach 2000 saw Double J, Jeff Jarrett, defend his WCW championship against Hulk Hogan. For one reason or another, Hulk Hogan and Vince Russo refused to let Jeff Jarrett win, and they were determined to put the world title back on Hogan. All three parties then agreed that Jarrett would ultimately lie down in the ring and let Hogan pin him. And that's exactly what they did. much to the shock and anger of the fans. It looked extremely unprofessional, and later in the night, Vince Russo got on the mic and began to quote-unquote shoot on Hogan. He claimed that nobody would see Hogan in WCW again, while also booking a bout between Jeff Jarrett and Booker T later that night for the now vacant WCW World Championship. Hogan's short match with Jeff Jarrett was Hogan's last match in WCW. Hogan, who claimed to be unaware of Vince Russo's promo, later sued WCW for millions of dollars for defamation of character for the unplanned promo. WCW entered one of the craziest lawsuits ever, focused on character perception and booking. The court case turned into the jury having to decide if Russo was talking about the person Terry Bollea or the Hogan character. An official ruling in favor of Russo and WCW came years later after the company no longer existed. And up next, we have Hulk Hogan admits to using roids. In 1994, Vince McMahon went on trial in United States versus McMahon, accused of supplying illegal roids to WWE wrestlers. Hogan, no longer with WWE and working for WCW, took the stand as the star witness. He was protected by immunity, but he had denied using roids for years. For over a decade, Hogan insisted he never touched roids. In court, he admitted the truth. He'd been abusing them for 14 years. First for injuries, then simply to maintain his physique. He claimed that Vince McMahon never supplied or requested he take them, helping McMahon dodge a conviction that would have landed him in prison. The admission shattered the superhero image of Hogan that he had built in the 1980s. In a world that was still more naive about performance-enhancing drugs, the confession felt like betrayal. Vince walked free, but Hogan walked away forever changed, a hero who had just pulled back the curtain on his own myth. And up next, we have Hulk Hogan kills TNA. TNA had a solid secondary spot in wrestling behind WWE when Hulk Hogan joined the promotion. Dixie Carter had paid Hogan a lot of money and gave him power to make change as he vowed to compete with WWE like he did in WCW. Hogan ruined any goodwill he had in his first month when mocking the fans for being unhappy with some of his changes, like changing the 6-sided ring to a 4-sided ring. TNA's entire history before Hogan was trashed by him. His era caused a lot of negative declines that the promotion is still recovering from today. Throughout the time Hogan was in TNA, they were getting a lot of bad press, with the news regularly breaking of wrestlers being underpaid and numerous stars being frustrated with the state of the company. Responding to the low morale, Impact boss Dixie Carter held a big staff meeting where she basically gave them the old "my way or the highway" speech, and she told the wrestlers that if they didn't like the way things were being done in Impact, then they could leave. Bafflingly, Dixie aired the meeting on the following episode of Impact. Dixie would go hard for Hogan up until his run with the company ended. Hogan's contract with TNA ran out in 2013, with Hogan being written off of the show by having him quit on screen. While that sort of thing is common in wrestling shows, the execution was outrageous, with Hogan trying to leave up the entrance ramp while a desperate Dixie Carter held onto the Hulkster's legs, begging him to stay. Of course, Hogan denied her and dragged Dixie as he walked up the aisle. It was an embarrassing segment that was reportedly the result of Hogan's contractually mandated creative control. And up next, we have the first ever IWGP champion. Before Hogan was decked in red and yellow in the WWE, he had a fairly substantial run in New Japan Pro Wrestling, where he quickly became one of the best foreign acts in Japan under Antonio Inoki. While WWE fans often joke about Hogan's limited in-ring style, punch, big boot, and leg drop, his time in New Japan Pro Wrestling revealed a very different side to the Hulkster. In Japan, Hogan adapted to the country's more hard-hitting, technically driven style, incorporating submissions, chain wrestling, working longer bouts, and even selling for opponents in ways unheard of in his American work. Fans watching at the time saw a wrestler who could genuinely hang with Japan's best. In 1983, New Japan introduced the IWGP League, with the winner of the tournament becoming the first ever IWGP Heavyweight Champion. The final saw Hogan and Inoki battle it out in front of 13,000 fans in the Sumo Hall. During the match, Inoki stood on the ring apron, holding himself by the ropes, when Hogan looked to hit the Axe Bomber, which was his finishing move in Japan. He clattered Inoki with it, and the landing was harder than expected. Tumbling to the outside, Inoki fell to the ground, hitting his head hard with the metal guardrail and getting knocked out clean. The young lions rushed over to the New Japan founder, whilst the ref started his count in the ring. Antonio Inoki was actually supposed to win the match, but because of this unfortunate incident, Hulk Hogan was crowned the first ever IWGP Heavyweight Champion by accident due to a count-out victory. Hulk Hogan then went on to hold the title for a year, and Inoki was the one who took it off of him. And up next we have Hogan rips shirt for Trump. At the 2024 Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Hulk Hogan stepped into the political arena with full Hulkamania flair. He ripped off his shirt to reveal a Trump Vance top, and he tore it in a speech calling Donald Trump a real American hero, complete with Trumpomania chants and cheers from the MAGA crowd. And while the people in that building were cheering that night, not all wrestling fans were cheering. A large segment of the fan base, especially liberals, felt deep disappointment. Hogan, already controversial for past scandals, had now aligned himself politically to the right, and that triggered a wave of intensified backlash among those who saw him endorsing a polarizing figure. And now we're moving down the iceberg into Tier 5, with our first entry on Tier 5 being Hulk and Linda's messy divorce. After 24 years together, Hulk Hogan's marriage to Linda ended in a public and brutal divorce in 2007 to 2009. Linda filed this divorce after discovering that Hogan had an affair with a close friend of their daughter, Brooke, which ultimately blew their marriage apart. Linda walked away with over 70% of their liquid assets, 40% ownership of his companies, $3 million in property, and more. This left Hogan with approximately 30% of the shared wealth. The personal fallout was worse than financial, because Linda later called Hogan a fornication addict and accused him of prolonged cycles of lying and abuse, even going as far to accuse him of domestic abuse and attempted murder. The fallout didn't just end in court. The reality TV show, Hogan Knows Best, collapsed amid the scandal, and the family fractured. And up next we have Hogan stole superstar Billy Graham's gimmick. Before Hulk Hogan found the legendary Hulkamania persona that would define an era, he ran through a series of forgettable gimmicks. Some of these were Terry Boulder and the Super Destroyer when he wrestled under a mask, and at one point he even wore a cape in an attempt to stand out. None of it truly clicked though. By the early 1980s, Vince McMahon was taking the WWF national and needed a top babyface who could push wrestling into the mainstream, someone who could be the face of the company and appeal beyond the wrestling bubble. And that's where the transformation began. He picked Hogan, but he needed more. The blueprint? Superstar Billy Graham. Superstar Billy Graham was flamboyant, tanned, and jacked, referring to his arms as pythons long before Hogan. He also used brother a lot in his promos, and rocked loud tie-dye gear. It sounds familiar, right? Sounds a lot like Hulk Hogan. Hogan didn't just take inspiration, he lifted the entire style and reworked it into a superhero in the 80s. Vince McMahon wanted Billy Graham to be his top star, but he was ahead of his era as he was getting up there in age, and he was also booked as a heel, so he went with Hogan, while keeping Graham's style and catchphrases but flipping the script into a patriotic, all-American icon. And up next we have the Hogan and Undertaker tombstone. In 1991, during Hulk Hogan's match against The Undertaker at Survivor Series, the ending spot was supposed to be safe. Paul Bearer distracted Hogan. Undertaker hit the tombstone piledriver on a chair, and Hogan's head was never meant to touch the chair. But things went wrong.
Boom. I give him the tombstone. As soon as my knees hit, I hear, oh. You got me, brother.
Hogan implied that his neck had been hurt by The Undertaker, and backstage, rumors spread that Hogan was yelling for someone to call his wife and kids, claiming that he was in severe pain. The story rattled Mark Calloway, who thought he had just injured the company's biggest star. 6 days later, Hogan conveniently won the title back from The Undertaker at Tuesday in Texas. Many people believe that this was Vince McMahon's way of punishing the young dead man. Undertaker admitted that the incident shook his confidence until Shane McMahon reassured him that Hogan's head never even touched the mat. When Calloway eventually watched the match back, the truth was obvious. Hogan's neck was perfectly safe. He confronted Hogan directly, who then changed his story, but The Undertaker saw right through it. And up next we have the finger poke of doom. Just 1 week after Goldberg's streak was ended by Kevin Nash and a cattle prod, WCW put on one of the worst matches ever in wrestling history. They decided to end any interest in an intra-NWO rivalry between the NWO Wolfpack and the NWO Hollywood. New WCW head booker and WCW World Champion Kevin Nash booked himself in a match defending his title against Hollywood Hogan. This could have been a huge pay-per-view main event that saw the two sides of the same faction alive, and a storyline that could have gotten the company months and months of storytelling opportunity. Instead, the pair got into the ring and stood face to face. Hogan then simply poked Nash in the chest, causing the 7-foot-tall champion to throw himself to the ground and allow himself to get pinned. This moment was so ridiculous and damaging, and to make matters worse, on the orders of Eric Bischoff, announcer Tony Schiavone revealed that Mankind would be winning the WWF Championship on the taped edition of Monday Night Raw airing simultaneously on the USA Network. The plan was intended to dissuade viewers from changing the channel, but it backfired immensely, with nearly 1 million wrestling fans switching from WCW Monday Nitro to Monday Night Raw to watch the universally loved Mick Foley become a world champion for the first time. And up next, we have Hulk Hogan runs for president. It was November 9, 1998 on WCW Nitro. The screen opens with shots of Mount Rushmore, the Capitol, and the Statue of Liberty. The crowd was confused until Hollywood Hulk Hogan walks out flanked by Secret Service agents, patriotic balloons everywhere, and Mean Gene Okerlund holding a mic. In one dramatic moment, Hogan then announced he's running for president in 2000, with Eric Bischoff as his campaign manager. Fast forward to Thanksgiving week, and Hogan's on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno and doubles down. He announces not just his in-ring retirement, but that he's transitioning into a real-life presidential run. Without skipping a beat, he pitches a flat tax platform. Then the segment ends, and then Hogan disappears, only to return to WCW about a month later and was never heard of again. The cheap tactic for attention was obviously a publicity stunt, and it made Hogan look bad when returning to wrestling. And up next, we have Hulk Hogan's main event video game. When Hulk Hogan's main event dropped for Xbox 360 Connect in 2011, it was marketed as the ultimate chance to step into the ring with the Hulkster's guidance. In reality, it became infamous as one of the worst wrestling games ever made. Instead of actual wrestling gameplay, matches devolved into a clunky just dance routine, copying on-screen poses to execute the same limp moves over and over again. The Kinect sensor often failed to read movements, meaning punches flew into thin air or didn't register at all. To make matters worse, you couldn't even play as Hulk Hogan himself, a baffling choice for a game with his name plastered on the cover. With bare-bones content, repetitive gameplay, and frustrating motion controls, Hulk Hogan's main event became a cautionary tale of celebrity-licensed games gone wrong, remembered more for broken mechanics than body slams. And up next, we have Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. In 1985, at the height of Hulkamania, WWF tried to expand Hogan's reach beyond the ring with an animated series called Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. It featured a cartoon version of Hogan and other wrestlers like Andre the Giant, Roddy Piper, and Junkyard Dog, though none of the actual wrestlers voiced their own characters. Instead, professional voice actors played exaggerated versions of them, while the real wrestlers appeared only in live-action skits between episodes. The show tried to merge wrestling's wild personas with Saturday morning cartoon antics, but critics found it shallow and repetitive. Storylines usually boiled down to Hogan and his friends foiling the heels' over-the-top schemes, all while pushing the say your prayers and eat your vitamins narrative. Despite poor reviews, it was a rating success among kids, but it didn't last. After just 2 seasons, Rockin' Wrestling was quietly cancelled in 1986. Today, it's remembered less for its plots and more as a relic of how far WWF was willing to go to make Hogan a cross-media icon. And up next, we have Hogan invited to be Metallica's bassist. Before Hulkamania, Hulk's first love wasn't wrestling, it was music. Since his teenage years, he'd been playing bass guitar, performing in various local bands throughout his young adult life. There's truth in that part of his story. Hogan was genuinely active in the music scene before stepping into the ring. But the truth stopped there. Hogan once claimed that before Metallica hit it big, the band approached him to join as their bassist. According to Hogan, he even tried out for them and could have been part of rock history if he accepted their offer. The reality, Metallica members Lars Ulrich and James Hetfield publicly shot down the story, and saying that it never happened and they never met Hogan. For many fans, it was just another chapter in Hogan's long history of exaggerating self-mythologizing, where a little bit of truth gets buried under a mountain of lies. And up next, we have Hogan vs. Warrior 2. When the Ultimate Warrior debuted on WCW's Monday Nitro in the summer of '98, wrestling fans were buzzing, as one of wrestling's most mysterious and exciting characters was back in the big leagues after 2 years away. And because in 1990, the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan put on one of the best WWF matches of all time, they were looking forward to Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior's program together in WCW. However, their program was very lackluster. The feud between the two got sillier and sillier as time went on, as the Ultimate Warrior would make frequent and rambling appearances, and one time he once appeared in a mirror taunting Hogan, who was the only one who could see him despite Eric Bischoff also being in the room. This was just cringe to watch. As things got more stupid, fans cared less and less, but they were set for a rematch at WCW's Halloween Havoc in 1998. This match was the drizzling shit though. Everything about this fight was ridiculous. There was way too much stalling, the wrestling was embarrassingly awful, and the finish was an all-time disaster. Not that Dave Meltzer's opinion matters, but he gave this match his lowest possible rating, -5 stars. Years later, Eric Bischoff even admitted that it was one of the worst matches he'd ever seen in wrestling. And up next we have Hogan's acting career flop. Hulk Hogan's true cinematic peak arguably came before his wrestling superstardom in 1982's Rocky III, where he stole the scene as Thunderlips, the ultimate male. It was loud, over the top, and a perfect fit for Hogan's persona, but while Rocky III put him on Hollywood's radar, he hadn't yet fully broken into the mainstream, and his later attempts to do so would prove far rockier. His first real starring role came in 1989's No Holds Barred, a WWF-flavored action flick meant to pad his persona into Hollywood. Instead, critics skewered it. Hogan had zero emotional range, and moments that required anything beyond raw brute force flopped. It felt more like a WWF cameo stretched into feature length. Beyond that, his forays into family comedy, sci-fi, and hero flicks like Suburban Commando, The Nanny, and Santa with Muscles all tanked in the box office. Hogan never truly found a great genre that fit, and the roles were often too flat for his larger-than-life presence to carry. Hogan's Hollywood run became a cautionary tale. What works in the ring doesn't always work under the bright lights of the silver screen. And up next we have Hogan kills Jesse Ventura's Union Plan. In 1986, just a year after WrestleMania put WWF on the map, Jesse the Body Ventura decided that it was time for wrestlers to protect themselves. There were no real health benefits, no pensions, and no real safety net for performers, despite the company's booming success. Ventura believed that WrestleMania 2 was the perfect leverage point to demand change, pushing for a union that could negotiate better pay and safer working conditions. Many wrestlers quickly supported the idea. Hogan was friends with Ventura and supposedly agreed that there should be a union in wrestling. But then again, Hogan's a snake. The plan to make a union never got that far, because once Hogan caught wind of the movement, he went straight to Vince McMahon. Vince moved quickly, calling wrestlers one by one and threatening their jobs if they supported Ventura's proposal. The message was clear: unionizing was career death. Whatever Hogan's motives were, like loyalty to Vince, self-preservation, or pure politics, the result was the same. The union was dead before it began. And now we're moving down the iceberg into Tier 4, with our first entry on Tier 4 being the fallout with his daughter, Brooke Hogan. While Hogan's public life may have been riddled with controversy, some of his deepest fractures have been within his own family, particularly with his daughter, Brooke. Once the centerpiece of Hogan Knows Best and a public defender of her father during the 2015 racism scandal, Brooke's relationship with the Hulkster has since collapsed. According to reports, Brooke and Hogan had a massive falling out years ago, so severe that she cut both of her parents out of her life entirely. By 2025, she hadn't spoken to her father in years and even kept the birth of her twins a secret from him. She skipped his wedding to his third wife, Sky Daly, openly stating that she needed space from her family to heal. Brooke has alleged years of emotional, mental, and even physical abuse during her upbringing. Though she placed most of the blame on her mother, still, her silence towards her father speaks volumes, especially considering how fiercely she once defended him. Today, Brooke seems to be content living her life far away from the shadow of Hulkamania, sharing glimpses of her family on social media while leaving the Hulkster firmly in her past. The wounds are so deep, in fact, that Brooke did not even attend her father's funeral, as it was a complicated death for her. This just shows how much their relationship is strained, even in death. And up next we have Hogan's beef with Bret Hart. In the annals of wrestling grudges, few are as long-running or bitter as the rivalry between Hulk Hogan and Bret Hart. At WrestleMania 9 in 1993, Bret Hart lost the WWF Championship to Yokozuna, only for Hogan to sweep into the ring seconds later and win the title himself. Many saw it as Hogan deliberately sabotaging Bret's push, and Hart believed that Hogan had betrayed him. Hart still blames Hogan for derailing his career, and Hogan on the other hand says since that moment, Bret Hart hated his guts. Hogan has said though that for a brief moment when Hart joined WCW in the late 90s, they were cordial with each other, but when that era ended, any peace between them evaporated once more. Over the years, jabs have been traded in interviews. And up next we have Hulk Hogan booed in his own hometown at WrestleMania 37. At WrestleMania 37 in 2021, Hulk Hogan returned to his hometown of Tampa, Florida, not as a competitor though, but as a co-host along Titus O'Neil. On paper, it should have been an easy pop, the local hero standing under the spotlight of WWE's biggest stage. But when Hogan stepped out, the ovation never came. Instead, a wave of boos rolled across the stadium, drowning out any attempt at fanfare.
Ahoy, mateys! Yo, brothers, and welcome to Wrestlemania Sunday!
The contrast was striking. Titus O'Neil received warm cheers while Hogan was met with open hostility. The crowd's reaction wasn't just a random mood swing. It was a public reminder that many fans still hadn't forgiven or forgotten Hogan's past racist remarks and other off-screen controversies. And up next we have Marvel vs. Hulk Hogan. For many years, Terry Bollea wrestled under the name Hulk Hogan, even billing himself as the Incredible Hulk Hogan at times. But in 1984, his rising fame in WWF, combined with his budding Hollywood ambitions, caught the attention of Marvel Comics' legal team. They believed the name was a little too close to their green-skinned superhero in purple pants, also named the Incredible Hulk. Rather than take them to court, Marvel and WWE struck a deal. Marvel would license the name Hulk Hogan for 20 years in exchange for a slice of the pie. 0.009% of all of Hulk Hogan's merchandise sales, plus $100 for every match that he wrestled in. By the time Hogan jumped to WCW in 1994, the Marvel issue was no longer a problem. According to Eric Bischoff, Hogan and Marvel had reached a new agreement allowing him to use the name Hulk Hogan in wrestling-related environments without owing Marvel a dime. In other words, by then, the Hulkster truly owned Hulk Hogan. And up next we have Benjamin Shelton. Hulk Hogan was promoting his Real American Freestyle Wrestling venture earlier this year. He name-dropped people like Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, and Shelton Benjamin. The problem is, he got it completely backwards, and he called him Benjamin Shelton a couple of times.
Great guys like Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar, you know, they're Benjamin Shelton, they're some really tough guys. Really crazy wrestlers, like I got Brock Lesnar right after he left the UFC. I got him first. I got Kurt Angle when his eyeballs used to roll back like a shark and he'd come after me. You know, Benjamin Shelton, all these different guys that I've had the opportunity to see adapt to our business.
That slip sparked immediate backlash. Shelton Benjamin didn't just shrug it off. He took to social media and ripped into Hogan with blistering honesty. The Hurt Syndicate, including MVP, jumped in on it too, calling Hogan a pathological lying piece of human excrement. In best Hogan fashion, he was once again trying to elevate himself by associating with others, but this time it blew up in his face. And up next we have his beef with Shawn Michaels. On paper, Hulk Hogan and Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam 2005 was billed as a dream match, two of wrestling's biggest names finally colliding. In reality, it was less of a clash of legends and more of a clash of egos. From the start, the two couldn't see eye to eye. Hogan insisted that Michaels turn heel for the program, something that Shawn was reluctant to. WWE went along with Hogan's demand, but Shawn made it clear that he wasn't thrilled. His heel turn barely lasted beyond the match. Originally, the plan was for a trilogy of bouts, but Hogan refused, leaving only one encounter. Backstage tensions bled into the performance itself. During the match, Michaels famously oversold nearly every one of Hogan's moves to absurd extremes, bouncing, flailing, and tumbling around the ring like a cartoon character. It was part protest, part parody, and a not-so-subtle message about how he felt working with Hogan. The dream match ended up being more infamous than iconic, remembered less for its in-ring action, and more of a public display of two legends refusing to play nice. And up next we have Hogan in Legends of Wrestling 2. In the video game Legends of Wrestling 2, Hulk Hogan wasn't just the cover star, he was the endgame boss. In career mode, if you chose someone besides the Hulkster, you couldn't even step into the ring with him until the final stages, and when you finally did, Hogan was so absurdly overpowered it bordered on impossible. He was basically OP, and players lamented of having to beat Hogan. For many, Hogan lived up to the unplayable nickname, not because of missing data or bugs, but because the game made him practically untouchable. And up next we have the Hogan vs. Sting at Starrcade 1997 disaster. One of the hardest feuds in pro wrestling history was Sting, during his Crow phase, taking on the NWO. He focused on the figurehead of the NWO, Hollywood Hogan, and for many months, WCW teased a confrontation between the two. The bout finally took place at Starrcade 1997, where Hogan would put the WCW World's Heavyweight Championship on the line. Sting and Hogan faced each other in what turned out to be a fairly straightforward wrestling match, until something went wrong. Hogan hit Sting with his trademark move and went for the pinfall. According to WCW referee Nick Patrick, he was supposed to make a lightning-fast 3-count. However, when Patrick counted Sting's shoulder to the mat, he went at a normal speed. The result was Hogan cleanly pinning the hero Sting on national live television. The announce team would assert that the count was lightning fast, even though fans could clearly see it was not. Patrick was then replaced by an interim referee, Bret Hart, who declared Sting the winner after Hogan tapped out to the Scorpion Deathlock. A year of build-up was ruined, and the mystique of the Stinger was gone in an instant. All of this was because the finish was changed due to the Hulk's creative control clause that had ruined the entire match. Bret Hart also looked like a tool. It made the good guys look like idiots who just served to put Hogan over even more. It also caused huge damage to WCW's reputation. And up next we have Hogan saves WrestleMania 1's main event from Mr. T. WrestleMania 1 was make or break for WWE. The entire future of the company rested on the success of the night, and its main event, Hulk Hogan and Mr. T versus Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. But according to Hogan himself, the main event almost fell apart before the bell. In multiple interviews, Hogan claims that Mr. T got cold feet. The A-Team star, known for his tough guy image, apparently started second-guessing everything. He was worried that taking bumps, selling offense, or just being in a worked match might hurt his reputation. According to Hogan, Mr. T was getting really sketchy and nervous. It didn't help that Mr. T allegedly had a backstage confrontation with Dr. D. David Schultz at a house show beforehand, which only made things worse. Schultz, never one to hold back, may have rattled Mr. T even more. Hogan, of course, claims that he was the one who talked Mr. T down and convinced him to go through with the match. It might be true, very much embellished, or a flat-out lie. And up next we have Hulk Hogan calls WWE Championship a toy. In 1993, Hogan was fresh off of his 5th WWF Championship win at WrestleMania 9, but instead of basking in the glow of Vince McMahon's spotlight, Hogan took the title to Japan and publicly buried it. At Wrestling Dontaku 1993, Hogan faced the Great Muta in a dream match, WWF Champion versus IWGP Heavyweight Champion, and winner takes all. Hogan won with his Japanese finishing move, the Axe Bomber, but it was his post-match comments that sent shockwaves back to the United States. Speaking to the Japanese press, Hogan dismissed the very belt he just defended, calling the WWF Championship just a toy, a trinket on a Christmas tree. He declared the IWGP belt the real prize, claiming that it would prove New Japan and Hulk Hogan were the greatest partners in the world. The comments were meant to endear him to the Japanese audience, but to Vince McMahon, they were an act of betrayal. He was the man that Vince had built into the face of the company, openly disrespecting the company's top prize. Within a month of returning to the States, Hogan dropped the WWF Championship back to Yokozuna at King of the Ring 1993 and never wrestled for the company again. By the end of the year, Hogan was gone, heading to WCW, and his infamous toy belt comment remained one of the most glaring examples of the Hulkster biting the hand that fed him. And now we're moving down the iceberg into Tier 3, with our first entry on Tier 3 being Hogan sued for his son Nick's car crash. In August of 2007, Hulk Hogan's son, Nick, was behind the wheel of his father's Toyota Supra when reckless driving changed a life forever. At just 17, Nick already had a dangerous record, multiple speeding tickets, points on his license, and even a car fire incident. But that night in Clearwater, Florida, would be the one that defined him. Racing through the streets at high speed, Nick lost control, slamming into a palm tree. His passenger, 22-year-old U.S. Marine John Graziano, suffered catastrophic brain injuries, leaving him in need of around-the-clock medical care for the rest of his life. The horror didn't end with the crash. Leaked jailhouse phone calls between Nick and Hulk painted the Hulkster in a damning light, as he appeared to shift blame towards Graziano for not wearing a seatbelt, rather than take accountability for his son's actions. The Graziano family sued both Nick and Hulk, and the Belzers were ordered to cover the staggering lifetime costs of John's care. In May of 2008, Nick was sentenced to 8 months in jail, 4 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and a 3-year driving ban. He served 5 months behind bars before being released. For many, the scandal cemented a darker view of Hulk Hogan's parenting and character, and while Nick eventually tried to rebuild his life, even marrying adult film actress Tana Leah, don't look that up, trouble seemed to follow him. In November of 2023, he was arrested again, this time for driving under the influence. And up next we have Hogan's beef with Mick Foley. Behind the scenes, Mick Foley and Hulk Hogan never saw eye to eye, and it all came to head in 2002 through some interviews.
I would probably say I've trained more in the last week than Mick Foley's trained in 30 years.
You know, I went ahead while Mick Foley was sleeping and eating cheeseburgers and M&Ms. I was in the gym working out. I work out 2 hours a day. I've been doing it for 30 years. It depends on where you want to be. The early bird ain't no worm.
Well, what do you say? Does that bug you?
Yeah, that bothers me more than I imagined it would. For Hulk Hogan to say that, I think is a lie. And I think if Hulk Hogan were to have wrestled me in his career, that he would sound more or less like a whiny girl in a porno film, saying not so fast and not so hard, because he didn't like the contact. So the reason I'm out early and he's around there when he's 49 years old, is because I put out. And I gave people their money's worth. He did in a different way. He was a great entertainer. But at the same time, you didn't have to apologize to your friends for watching a Mick Foley match. And sometimes, I know when I was on the Larry King show and they were watching Hulk in action, it was embarrassing for me to be considered to be in that same profession as he was, because his stuff was so obviously weak.
And up next we have Stone Cold refuses to work Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18. The original plan for WrestleMania 18 wasn't Hulk Hogan vs. Sting, it was Hogan vs. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Vince McMahon wanted the ultimate clash of eras, and Hogan was fully on board, even willing to put Austin over. But Austin flat out refused to work with Hogan, and instead worked Scott Hall at WrestleMania 18. For many years, Hogan never understood why Austin refused, and a backstage incident at the 2006 Hall of Fame only deepened tensions between Hogan and Austin. However, according to Jim Ross, Austin believed that their styles were oil and water, and that the chemistry simply wasn't there. Austin wasn't interested in just having a good match, he was obsessed with having a great match, and Hogan wasn't on his personal list of ideal opponents. JR even admitted that Austin might have been wrong, but by the time the dust settled, the match was dead. And instead, The Rock stepped in, and Hogan vs. Austin became one of wrestling's greatest what-ifs. And up next we have Hulk Hogan saves a teenage girl in Tampa. In January of 2024, a teenage girl in Tampa, Florida survived a terrifying rollover crash, thanks to an unlikely rescuer. Hogan, driving home from dinner with his wife Sky Daly and friend Jake Ross, saw another car clip the girl's vehicle, sending it flipping over. Without hesitation, Hogan and Ross ran to the wreck, and they pulled the girl out. Hogan revealed on X that in order to pull the girl out, without a knife, he improvised, using a ballpoint pen from Indian Rock's Christian school to deflate the airbag and pull her to safety. Police confirmed that the girl suffered only minor injuries, a lucky outcome in a potential horror show. And up next we have the real reason why the Mr. America gimmick ended. In 2003, Hulk Hogan debuted a brand new persona in WWE, the masked Mr. America. It was a tongue-in-cheek gimmick, with Mr. America denying that he was really Hogan, even though it was blatantly obvious. At first, it was played for laughs, with Mr. America feuding with Vince McMahon and teaming with fan favorites, but behind the scenes, tensions were rising. Hogan became unhappy with his payoffs and started pushing for more money to continue the gimmick. Negotiations with the WWE turned sour, and soon, Hogan refused to appear unless he got more money. Vince McMahon responded in the most WWE way possible, firing Mr. America on screen. To drive the point home, WWE aired unseen dark match footage showing Mr. America unmasking, proving to the audience that it had been Hogan all along. It was a kayfabe firing that doubled as a very real end to Hogan's WWE run at that time. And up next we have Hulk Hogan in Micro League Wrestling. Back in 1987, far before modern fighting games and online modes, Hulk Hogan starred in the first ever WWF licensed video game, Micro League Wrestling. He was the cover star for this game. This turn-based strategy title debuted on the Commodore 64 and Atari ST, later hitting Amiga and PC/DOS in 1989. Instead of real-time button mashing, players selected from a menu of actions, like body slam or leg drop, and watch animated sequences play out. You couldn't directly control Hogan. Instead, digitized stills from actual matches played between your choices. Matches could run for 10, 20, or even 60 minutes, depending on how you strategized. At a time where video games were pixelated and slow-paced, Hogan's face and his rivalries powered one of the earliest interactive experiences with pro wrestling fans. It wasn't flashy, but it planted the seed for the immersive wrestling games that we have today, and reminded everyone that the Hulkster was the business, even in crude digital form. And up next we have the Iron Sheik almost purposefully breaks Hulk Hogan's legs. Long before WrestleMania became the juggernaut it is today, Hulk Hogan's rise was being fought for behind the scenes, and according to one of wrestling's darkest rumors, someone didn't just want to stop Hogan's push, they allegedly tried to cripple it permanently. Back in the early 1980s, Hogan was on fire in the AWA. The fans loved him and the money was there, but Vern Gagne, the traditionalist running the show, refused to put the belt on Hogan. Gagne didn't like his style, and he didn't believe that he deserved to carry the company, so Hogan jumped ship. He then went to WWF, and Vince McMahon made him the face of the brand. WrestleMania was on the horizon, and Hogan was about to change wrestling forever, but all of this rubbed Gagne the wrong way. So much so that according to multiple sources, including the Iron Sheik himself, Vern Gagne offered the Iron Sheik $100,000 to break Hulk Hogan's leg during their match at Madison Square Garden before WrestleMania 1 to make sure to squash Hulkamania. The Iron Sheik declined and the match went on as planned and Hogan's career exploded. And up next we have the Pastamania flop. In 1995, at the height of Hogan's fame, the Hulkster decided it was time to branch out the squared circle and into the food court. His big idea? An Italian-themed fast food joint that opened inside Minnesota's Mall of America during Labor Day weekend, perfectly timed to coincide with the debut episode of WCW's Monday Nitro. On Nitro's historic first broadcast, Hogan cut an over-the-top promo from inside his restaurant, declaring that he had Pastamania running through his brain. The restaurant's gimmick was a mix and match between pasta menu dishes like beef stroganoff, pasta mexicana, and children's meals shaped like Hogan himself, like the Hulkaroni and cheese and Hulkios. Unfortunately, Pastamania was a flop, between questionable branding and lackluster food reviews. With lots of people calling the food mid, the restaurant closed within a few months. Today, Pastamania lives on as one of wrestling's strangest side hustles, often mentioned in the same breath as Hogan's other failed products, like the Hulkster Burgers, Hogan Energy, and the Thunder Mixer. And up next we have Randy Savage giving Hulk Hogan a black eye before WrestleMania 9 conspiracy theory. After stepping away from the ring at WrestleMania 8, Hulk Hogan made his big return a year later at WrestleMania 9, teaming with Brutus Beefcake against Money Inc. But when Hogan showed up, fans noticed something strange. He had a nasty black eye. The kayfabe explanation was that Ted DiBiase paid off some thugs to rough Hogan up before the match, but the official story from Hogan himself was that he got into a jet ski accident. But of course, there's a conspiracy theory that says otherwise. According to the rumor, Randy Savage punched Hogan in the face after finding out that Miss Elizabeth had left him due to Linda Hogan's influence. Some even speculate that Hogan and Elizabeth were secretly having an affair, and when Savage found out, he gave Hogan the black eye himself. The truth has never been confirmed, but to this day, fans still debate what really happened. And now we're moving down the iceberg into Tier 2. With our first entry on Tier 2 being Hogan takes in brother's child. To WCW fans, Horace Hogan was often dismissed as Hulk Hogan's real-life nephew, a mid-carder spot who seemed more about bloodline than talent, but behind the scenes, his life was marked by devastating loss. Horace's mother, Martha Alfonso, was murdered in 1986 by her boyfriend in a brutal crime that left the family shattered. That same year, Hulk Hogan's real-life brother, Horace's father, Alan Balea, died of a drug overdose at just 38 years old. Hogan later revealed that there were rumors tying Alan's death to a biker gang, but in truth, Alan was simply in desperate need of help, and no one was there to save him. In the aftermath, Hogan took Horace and his two sisters into his home, raising them while working a grueling WWE schedule. He admitted that he was already in serious physical pain from the road but couldn't walk away from wrestling, not with 3 kids depending on him. By the time Horace landed in WCW, many fans saw him as just another beneficiary of nepotism. Few realized that his career was also the product of Hogan's promise to protect the last pieces of his late brother's family. And up next we have the Brooke Hogan Lotion controversy. In the mid-2000s, Hulk Hogan found himself at the center of one of the strangest controversies of his career, and it didn't happen in a wrestling ring. Paparazzi photos surfaced of Hogan on a beach, rubbing oil over his daughter Brooke's rear and inner thighs while she lay face down in a tight bikini. The images spread like wildfire online, with many fans calling the scene disturbingly suggestive. The backlash only intensified when Hogan later tweeted a zoomed-in shot of Brooke's legs with the caption, "Brooke's legs," as if admiring them in a way that felt less fatherly and more objectifying. The IWC pounced, speculating endlessly and noting how Brooke, at that age, looked almost identical to Hogan's ex-wife, Linda. While most likely nothing sinister was intended, the optics were undeniably uncomfortable. The incident became a lasting piece of IWC gossip, remembered less for what it truly was and more for how unsettling it looked, and how quickly the wrestling world turned it into a storm. And up next we have the coke allegations. By now, it's public knowledge that Hulk Hogan's body has been through hell. Multiple surgeries, chronic back pain, and years of damage in the ring. He's been open about abusing painkillers and alcohol, but there's another, darker accusation that followed him for decades, that he was also a heavy cocaine user. Hogan's longtime rival, the Ultimate Warrior, would pour gasoline on the fire.
Terry, you truly are a dopehead. I mean, you have been into getting high and doing dope for years. There are days, Terry, where you do nothing but sit around and snort cocaine.
Whether true or not, the rumors have persisted, cementing themselves as one of the many shadows hanging over the Hulkster's career. And up next we have the Jake the Snake and Hulk Hogan Snake Pit segment. There's an infamous segment that hasn't been seen since the 1980s, but it's become legendary. Hulk Hogan and Jake the Snake Roberts were originally set to feud over the WWF Championship, and to kick things off, Jake invited Hogan to his talk segment, The Snake Pit, for an interview. During the segment, Roberts compared Hogan's arms to pythons and then suddenly dropped them with a DDT, setting the stage for their feud. But things didn't go as planned. The crowd exploded. Not for Hogan, but for Roberts. Vince McMahon, who was watching closely, panicked, seeing the fans cheer the heel instead of his top babyface and champion. McMahon reportedly pulled the plug on the feud immediately. As a result, WWE shelved the segment, and the footage has never officially been released. While Hogan and Roberts would go on to wrestle several times in '86 and '87, that original Snake Pit segment has never resurfaced. And up next we have Harley Race pulls out a gun on Hulk Hogan. In the mid-1980s, Vince McMahon's national expansion was tearing apart the old wrestling territory system, and Hulk Hogan was the face of that movement. While it made him a megastar, it also made him a target. Few were more furious than the NWA's World's Heavyweight Champion Harley Race, whose Kansas City territory was directly threatened by WWE's arrival. In 1984, on the eve of a WWE show in Kansas City, Harley reportedly broke in, tried, or at least threatened to burn the ring down. Word spread backstage that Race wanted Hogan dead, and while Hogan was taking a bathroom break, he heard Davey Boy Smith yell that Harley had arrived. When Hogan stepped out of the bathroom, there was Race, pointing a gun, a 9mm, directly at him. Harley allegedly told Hogan that he wanted to blow his kneecaps off, but he spared him after deciding that they might work together someday. Some accounts even claim that Harley punched Hogan as well. Whatever the exact details were, every retelling agrees. Harley Race pulled a gun on Hulk Hogan. By 1986, Race had joined WWE, and the two even worked matches together, but the story remains one of the wildest reminders of how dangerous it was to invade a rival territory in the 80s, especially when the man on the other side was Harley Race. And up next we have Hulk Hogan chokes out a TV host. In the build-up to the very first WrestleMania, just 5 days before the event, Hulk Hogan appeared on a talk show called Hot Properties, hosted by comedian Richard Belzer. Belzer, known for a sarcastic tone, repeatedly insisted that Hogan and Mr. T demonstrate a wrestling move on him. His attitude was that wrestling was fake, a dangerous opinion to voice during the kayfabe-heavy era of the 1980s. Hogan and Mr. T initially resisted, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of breaking character or exposing the business on live television, but Belzer wouldn't let it go. He kept pushing, and eventually Hogan gave in. What followed was no demonstration. Hogan legitimately locked Belzer into a front chinlock and applied real pressure. Within seconds, Belzer was choked out unconscious, collapsed limp to the studio floor, smacking his head hard as he landed. The moment was caught live on camera and left the audience stunned. Belzer later sued Hulk Hogan for $5 million, citing serious personal injury. The case was eventually settled out of court, but the incident has since become a legendary cautionary tale in wrestling. And up next we have the Randy Savage diss track on Hulk Hogan. If you're looking for the absolute wildest chapter in wrestling beef, it's gotta be the Macho Man Randy Savage dropping a rap diss track on Hulk Hogan. And yes, it's absurd as it sounds. In 2003, Savage released a hip-hop album called Be a Man under Big 3 Records. The lead single, Be a Man, was a full-on diss directed squarely at Hogan, and Savage didn't hold back.
I smell a coward, is that you, Hogan? My dude's gonna kick your butt.
In the song, he said lines like "Your movies went straight to video," and "You're a coward, Hulk Hogan." It wasn't just a novelty act. Savage insisted in interviews that his feud with Hulk Hogan was real, and that the song was genuine expression, not parody. And up next, we have the Brutus Beefcake and Hulk Hogan's secret gay affair conspiracy theory. Hulk Hogan and Brutus Beefcake were known to be close friends both inside and outside of the wrestling world. Their friendship dated back to the early days of their careers, and they were often seen working together in promotions like WWE and WCW. Because of their long-standing camaraderie and Beefcake's frequent appearances in Hogan-related storylines, some speculated about the nature of their relationship, leading to rumors that they were in a secret homo relationship. These rumors got inflamed by Hulk Hogan's ex-wife Linda in a 2011 memoir, Wrestling the Hulk, My Life Against the Ropes, where she accused Hogan and Brutus Beefcake being in a gay relationship. Hogan vehemently denied the accusations, and it turns out that he was telling the truth because Linda later came out and said that she actually lied about the accusations, and she even apologized to the Hulkster for making them up. And now we're moving down the iceberg into Tier 1, with our first entry on Tier 1 being the Hulk Hogan and the Satanic Panic connection. In the early 1980s, America was gripped by a moral hysteria that came to be known as Satanic Panic. It began in small-town whispers and tabloid headlines, stories of hidden cults, subliminal messages, and secret rituals said to lurk behind every corner. By the 1990s, this paranoia had reached a fever pitch. It was during this fevered climate that Hulk Hogan exploded into the mainstream. His image, the golden tan, the crucifix chain, the larger-than-life charisma, was marketed to children like a gospel. Train, say your prayers and eat your vitamins became a sermon, and Hulk Hogan became the fastest spreading movement in wrestling history. To some religious zealots at the time, it all looked too calculated. They claimed that Hogan was a false messiah, a manufactured idol sent to corrupt the youth under the guise of morality. Whispers compared the rise of Hulkamania to the Antichrist prophecy in Revelation, a charismatic figure who wins the hearts of the masses before leading them astray. The accusations grew stranger, like the Hulkster's hidden hand gestures during promos, occult imagery in WWF merchandise, and even claims that Hulk Hogan's iconic theme song carried coded messages when played backwards, mirroring the same accusations aimed at rock bands like Led Zeppelin and Judas Priest. A handful of fringe newsletters insisted that Vince McMahon's WWF was part of a wider entertainment plot to spiritually numb America's children, just as critics had said about MTV and Saturday morning cartoons. No proof was ever found, but in this point in time consumed by Satanic Panic, the idea that wrestling's biggest star could be part of the conspiracy didn't seem too far-fetched to the most paranoid among them. And up next we have Hulk Hogan SA as a reporter. Hulk Hogan is no stranger to lawsuits and scandals, and in 1996, a woman named Kate Kennedy accused Hogan of SA. The alleged assault occurred just 2 days before the launch of WCW's Monday Nitro program in September of 1995. Kennedy was a publicist for Hogan's failed restaurant endeavor called Pastamania. She alleged that she met Hulk at the Marriott Hotel in Bloomington, Minnesota to talk business. During the course of their meeting, Hogan allegedly became rough with Kate Kennedy and allegedly forced his member into her mouth. According to Hogan, Kennedy's lawyers sent legal papers to his home demanding that a written apology be published in USA Today, complete a sexual rehabilitation class, and lastly, pay her $1 million. Hogan then went on to sue Kate Kennedy and her attorney, accusing them of extortion. The case was eventually settled out of court, and no details were ever released about the settlement. What we do know is, the scandal nearly ended his marriage to his wife Linda. He admitted that the scandal affected his marriage severely, and it was never the same after that. And up next we have Hulk Hogan was CIA. In the shadowy corridors of conspiracy lore, some say Hulk Hogan wasn't just wrestling's biggest star, that he was a carefully engineered psychological operation, handpicked and cultivated by the CIA. Wrestling offered the perfect cover. In the mid-80s and 90s, Hogan traveled the globe under the guise of spreading Hulkamania. Japan, the Middle East, Europe, and the Caribbean, slipping past borders without a second glance. While fans saw him slamming giants in the ring, theorists claim that his real work was done in back rooms, hotel suites, and quiet dinners with contacts whose names never made the programs. The cover goes deeper. In the most extreme version of this theory, Terry Bollea was a constructed identity, possibly part of a witness protection-like program for a government asset, and he was rewarded with a wrestling career that would mask his true activities. And then there's the scandals, viewed here not as career killers, but deliberate moves in a larger game. The Bubba the Love Sponge tape leak? According to this theory, Hogan knew exactly what he was doing, planting an image so lurid, so scandalous it will corrupt and distract the masses, keeping them talking about smut instead of secrets. And also, the leaked racist comments in 2015? Conspiracists say that this was another calculated release, part of a broader CIA effort to inflame racial tensions in America that will ultimately lead to a race war between white and black people. The immortal one, immortal not just in wrestling history, but in the shadowy files of intelligence agencies, where real matches are fought far from the bright lights of the ring. And up next we have Hulk Hogan invited to Bohemian Grove. For decades, whispers about the Bohemian Grove have circulated through conspiracy circles, but unlike many conspiracy theories, this one has been proven real. Bohemian Grove was a sprawling, heavily guarded 2,007-acre campground hidden deep within Monte Rio, California. Every July, some of the most popular people in the world would gather there, from Fortune 500 CEOs to people in politics to world bankers and Hollywood icons and military leaders. The official line was that it was a private retreat for networking and relaxation, but the imagery, the rituals, and the secrecy have made it infamous. The most shocking piece of evidence came in 2000, when independent journalist Alex Jones managed to sneak into the grove with a hidden camera. What he filmed was something out of a nightmare. A ritual known as the cremation of care, performed in front of a massive 40-foot stone idol resembling an owl, said by some to represent the ancient god Moloch. We won't get too deep into who Moloch is, but it's extremely demonic, and across various historical accounts, worship of Moloch was considered to be one of the most depraved practices ever recorded. So where does Hulk Hogan come in? According to persistent rumors in the wrestling underworld, sometime during the 90s, Hogan allegedly received a discreet invitation to attend the Bohemian Grove gathering. Whether it was a genuine gesture or symbolic welcome into a deeper circle is unknown. What is said by those who claim to have seen the correspondence is that Hogan did not go. Maybe it was scheduling, maybe it was discomfort, or maybe, just maybe, he understood the weight of what such a place represented and chose to steer clear. For many conspiracy theorists, Hogan's invite is chilling because of what it suggests, that professional wrestling, with its blend of mass influence, isn't as far removed from elite social engineering as people think. Wrestling stars, especially ones as globally recognized as Hogan, are cultural influencers, and influencers are valuable to those who gather in secrecy behind guarded gates. And up next, we have Hulk Hogan's NWO was an Illuminati psyop. When Hulk Hogan dropped the red and yellow and embraced the black and white of the New World Order in 1996, wrestling fans were shocked. But to conspiracy theorists, the name alone, New World Order, wasn't just an edgy faction title. It was a direct nod to one of the most infamous theories of our time, that a secret elite cabal is plotting to unite the globe under one authoritative government. The New World Order doctrine in conspiracy law is about control, dismantling national sovereignty, collapsing economies, and creating a single ruling class that dictates every aspect of human life. To those already steeped in that worldview, Hogan, Hall, and Nash weren't just playing heels. They were the symbolic frontmen of an agenda whispered about for decades. The fact that WCW chose the name wasn't seen as coincidence, it was seen as predictive programming, basically hiding in plain sight, telling you exactly what they're doing. And then there's the hand sign, the NWO Too Sweet gesture. This is publicly explained as the Wolf Salute, which is used by a far-right Turkish group, but skeptics saw something else, unmistakable devil horns. To those looking deeper, the NWO storyline was more than just edgy marketing, it was a psychological operation. In the language of propaganda, a psyop aims to influence emotions, attitudes, and behaviors on a mass scale, often by blurring the line between entertainment and ideology, by turning wrestling's most beloved hero into its most notorious villain, and making that villain cool. The NWO trained audiences to embrace a shift in moral alignment without even realizing it. Psychologically, the NWO represented something more unsettling, the glamoration of rebellion without morality. They weren't honorable heroes fighting for justice. They were arrogant, manipulative, and self-serving, yet the crowds couldn't get enough. The demand for the villains grew louder than for the good guys, shifting the moral center of the wrestling itself. It was as if the audience had been seduced, learning to idolize the outlaws. And Hogan was the perfect spearhead for that shift. Hogan now stood draped in black, spitting venom at fans who once adored him. It's almost like how Lucifer was an angel once and then fell to become the devil. Now Hogan was using his charisma to lead people into the shadows. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, please watch our WCW Iceberg by clicking on the screen now. Thank you very much and goodbye.